I was denied entry to my own sister's wedding by my family. As I arrived, the shock on their faces wasn't happiness. "You were not invited," my father hissed. And when I refused to leave, security was called. "Get her out of here," my father barked. "She is nothing but a burden." Burden. The words landed like a gavel, and the irony burned through me. Because what none of them knew was that I funded half the wedding. "Enjoy the wedding," I said before I walked away. "It's the last thing you'll ever get from me," then canceled $80,000 worth of support. Minutes later, my phone exploded with calls and messages. If you are watching this, I would love to know where you are from. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family. Trust me, this story about family betrayal and standing up for yourself is one you will not want to miss. I wasn't always the outsider. Or maybe I was, but it took me years to realize it. We grew up in San Diego, in a house that was more museum than home. My father, Dr. Rafael Rivera, was a respected surgeon. My mother, Isabel, a pediatrician. Both children of immigrants, they had clawed their way into the upper echelons of medicine, and they expected their children not just to follow, but to surpass. "Medicine is the Rivera legacy," my father would say over Sunday dinners. The mahogany table gleaming under a chandelier. "Healing is in our blood. Don't waste what we built." Elena, the eldest, embraced it eagerly. She was the golden child, honors student, valedictorian, full-ride scholarship to Stanford, then med school. Mateo, 2 years younger, followed seamlessly. His athletic prowess earned him admiration, but it was his decision to specialize in orthopedics that sealed his status as the second star in my parents' constellation. Then there was me, Alexa, the youngest, the creative one. From the moment I could hold a pencil, I was sketching. By 10, I was teaching myself digital design on an ancient laptop. While Elena memorized anatomy charts and Mateo shadowed Dad in the hospital, I was sketching logos for imaginary companies, editing photos, and tinkering with early web design. "Art is a hobby," my father said dismissively when I showed him my first portfolio. "You can't eat with hobbies." My mother, gentler but no less cutting, added, "We're just worried about your future, cariño. Not everyone is special enough to succeed in something so unreliable." At family dinners, the conversation orbited Elena's lab results and Mateo's surgeries. When it turned to me, it was only to scold. "How are your grades in chemistry? Have you thought about nursing? At least that's stable." No one asked about the local businesses hiring me to design flyers, or the nonprofit that used my website, or the thrill I felt watching strangers engage with something I created. Invisible. That was my role. By senior year, the pressure was unbearable. My father had already drafted applications for pre-med programs in my name. Elena coached me for interviews I never wanted. One night, after another shouting match over my refusal to apply, I packed a duffel bag. At 18, I left home with $600 from tutoring money and my battered laptop. I rented a studio with a leaking sink. I survived on instant noodles and gas station coffee. I worked at a print shop by day and freelanced by night. I never asked them for a cent. Not when I collapsed from exhaustion and spent 6 hours in the ER. Not when my landlord threatened eviction. Not even when I lost everything on a bad client who never paid. And here's the twist no one saw coming. By 30, my design agency, Horizon Creative, was pulling in 7 figures annually. From a one-woman freelancing hustle, I had built a team of 35 designers, animators, and developers with clients across the US and Europe. We handled everything from Fortune 500 rebrands to Grammy-winning album covers. I had made it. But at family gatherings, when I dared to show up, I was still just Alexa. No title, no accolades. Just a polite nod before the conversation swerved back to Elena's residency or Mateo's new surgical technique. No one mentioned that Horizon Creative's revenue had quietly surpassed both their salaries combined. And yet, I still tried. I still showed up. I sent gifts. I called on birthdays. I made donations in their names. And in secret, I helped them financially. The secret benefactor. It started small. In 3 years, I had poured nearly $250,000 into supporting the very family who pretended I barely existed. All of it, without credit, without acknowledgement, without even a whispered thank you. Because some desperate part of me still hoped, maybe if I kept giving, one day they'd see me. Which is why, when I walked into that cathedral on Elena's wedding day, only to be treated like an intruder, something inside me snapped. All the years of invisible sacrifice, of quiet funding, of swallowing slights while buying their approval, all of it erupted in that moment. And what came next would dismantle everything we thought we were as a family. The week before Elena's wedding should have been a celebration. For her, it was. For me, it was a slow-motion unraveling. It started with the group chat, a Rivera family wedding updates thread I was conveniently left out of. I only found out about it when my cousin Sophia let it slip at brunch. "Did you see the pictures of the rehearsal dinner venue?" she asked, scrolling on her phone. My fork hovered in midair. What rehearsal dinner? Her face froze. "Oh, She shoved her phone back into her bag. "Never mind, I thought you knew." I didn't. That night, curiosity burned through me. I scrolled through Elena's Instagram stories. There they were, my parents, my siblings, the extended family, laughing at a seafood restaurant by the day. Toasts, clinking glasses, smiling photos tagged #Rivera Wedding Week. Not a single message to me. I stared at the screen, the ache in my chest, familiar, but sharper than usual. Maybe it's a mistake, I told myself. Maybe they assumed I was busy. Maybe the invite got lost. But then, 2 days later, a wedding planner emailed me directly. She'd confused my address with Mateo's, forwarding an invoice by accident. The subject line, "Final balance due, cathedral rental and catering package." My eyes scanned the line items. Cathedral deposit, $12,000, paid. Catering down payment, $18,000, paid. Live band retainer, $7,500, paid. Remaining balance, $22,000, pending. At the bottom, my bank account routing number was listed. I leaned back in my chair, bile rising in my throat. They had no problem using my money. But acknowledging me? Including me? Not a chance. The exclusion wasn't new. It was the same dynamic that had played out my entire life. Only now it had dollar signs attached. When I was 12, Elena won a regional science fair. My parents rented a banquet hall, invited the whole extended family, and gave speeches about her brilliance. When Mateo made varsity soccer, they bought him a new car for practices. When I won first place in a citywide digital art competition, my mother smiled thinly and said, "That's nice, cariño, but don't let it distract you from real subjects." At family gatherings, I was introduced like an afterthought. "This is Alexa. She works with computers." Never mind that by 25 I had clients in 3 countries. Never mind that by 28 my agency cleared $1 million in revenue. I was still the daughter who didn't fit their mold. The daughter they whispered about when neighbors asked. The daughter they loved in private, maybe, but never proudly in public. And now, apparently, the daughter they could quietly take money from while shutting her out of the very events her money paid for. The gift that didn't matter. Despite everything, I still wanted to give them something meaningful. 2 weeks before the wedding, I purchased a pair of tickets to Italy for Elena and her fiancé. Business class, open-dated, with a curated itinerary of vineyard tours, museum passes, and a private villa in Tuscany. $10,000. I wrapped the folder in navy paper, tied it with a silver ribbon, and wrote a card. To Elena and Marco. "May your love be as enduring as Florence's Duomo, as joyful as Venice's canals, and as timeless as Rome itself. Love, Alexa." I imagined her opening it at the rehearsal dinner, gasping, hugging me. I imagined, foolishly, that maybe this would be the moment she looked at me not as the odd sister, but as someone who mattered. The folder sat untouched in my hotel safe the night before the wedding, because, of course, I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner where gifts were exchanged. Walking into the cathedral that Saturday was like walking into a dream or a trap. The air smelled of lilies and polished wood. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, scattering colors across the floor. Guests laughed, greeted one another, adjusted ties and dresses. And me? I felt like a ghost. Everywhere I turned, whispers. Eyes flicking toward me, then away. A murmur rippled through the pews. Isn't that the sister? Why does she look so out of place? I spotted Elena across the nave, radiant in lace, veil cascading down her back. For a fleeting moment, pride surged in me. That was my sister, and she was beautiful. Then she turned, her smile faltered, her eyes darted to our parents, and she looked away. The message was clear. When my father hissed, "You weren't supposed to be here," something in me fractured. Not just the humiliation of being uninvited, not just the sting of being cast out in front of hundreds of guests, but the realization, the certainty, that I had funded the very stage on which my humiliation was now being performed. Every champagne glass, every floral arch, every polished marble tile beneath their designer shoes. My money, my invisibility, my family. The guard's grip was firm but not cruel as he led me toward the cathedral doors. I kept my chin high, though my stomach churned. Gasps followed me like shadows. Outside, the California sun blazed hot. My dress clung to me. My chest heaved with a mix of rage and grief. I walked to the curb, my phone buzzing endlessly in my pocket. Cousins, colleagues, even a few guests who'd witnessed the spectacle. "Are you okay? What happened?" Your father looked furious. I ignored them all. By the time I reached my hotel room, the tears came, hot, furious, unstoppable. But as quickly as they came, they dried. Something colder replaced them. Something I had never felt so clearly before. I opened my laptop and logged into my accounts. The $4,000 monthly transfer to my parents? Canceled. The landscaper and housekeeper services for their home? Terminated. The professional grant installments for Elena's house? Stopped. The Italy tickets? Refunded. The honeymoon flights? Canceled. In less than an hour, I dismantled every thread of financial support I had woven through their lives. $85,000 worth of immediate commitments, gone. And with it, any illusion that money could ever buy me belonging. The phone calls started within hours. My father's voice, first demanding, then threatening, then, astonishingly, pleading. My mother's texts, syrupy sweet, begging me to be reasonable. Elena's messages, angry and incredulous. Mateo's silence, the most cutting of all. By dawn, the family's perfect facade was cracking, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to hold it together. I was the one watching it fall apart. Sometime after midnight, the cathedral's bells tolled. I lay awake in the hotel dark, staring at the spiderweb of light seeping around the blackout curtains. The room still smelled faintly of the perfume I'd put on hours earlier, back when I believed I was going to my sister's wedding. My phone vibrated again. I flipped it face up. Missed calls, 14. Voicemails, 7. Texts, 23. The first voicemail was my father's, time-stamped 9:47 p.m., right after I left the cathedral. "Alexa, the venue has a payment discrepancy. Call me back, now." The second, an hour later, was sharper. Words clipped like he was suturing a wound. "What do you think you're doing? The coordinator says your card on file was declined for the final transfer. Fix it, immediately." I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to the third. His voice had roughened, either from whiskey or pride. I couldn't tell. If you've decided to embarrass this family, there will be consequences. Do you understand me? Next came my mother's texts, elbowing in with the sugary tone she wore like a silk scarf. Mi amor, please call us. Your father is upset. We can sort this out. You know how he gets when he's stressed. Don't be dramatic. Elena's messages followed. Less velvet. More blade. You ruin my day and then pull funding? Are you kidding? Who does that? We told the coordinator it was a bank glitch. They put the balance on Dad's card. Fix it by morning. Mateo didn't call. He sent a single text. We need to talk tomorrow. I set the phone down. A low throb had settled behind my eyes. I turned off every notification, slid the device back into the safe, next to the Italy folder I'd never gotten to give, and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally found me. At sunrise, San Diego looked clean enough to forgive. Lights spilled across the harbor, white sails pricking the horizon, joggers moving along the waterfront in tidy lines. I showered, dressed, and went out for coffee like any other morning. At the cafe, the barista wrote Alex on the cup even though I'd said Alexa. It made me smile for no reason I could explain. The small indignities of life were easier to bear than the curated ones. I sat by the window, sipped, and let the heat fill my chest like courage. I had pulled the plug. I had done it, finally, decisively, and no part of me wanted to reverse it. There's a clarity that arrives after you choose yourself. It isn't loud. It doesn't cheer. It just sits with you, level and sure, like an old friend. By the time I walked back to the hotel, I'd decided. No calls, no explanations. Not yet. I'd drive home, head to the office, and work. My life existed outside their approval. If I kept moving inside that life, maybe the static would fade. It didn't fade. It grew. I took the 5 North with the windows down, salt wind in my face. The dress I'd worn to the cathedral hung wrinkled in the back seat. I kept picturing that hush after I spoke, my father's mouth hardening, Elena's veil catching the light as she turned away. Something in me kept looping that image, as if replaying it enough times might produce a different outcome. They had a beautiful wedding, I told myself. The pictures would be perfect. The captions would be careful. They would crop me out of the story the way they always had. But money doesn't care about caption angles. Money is literal. Money lands, or it doesn't. And by the time I hit Bay Park, the first messages from extended family had started coming in. Mijo, what happened? Your mom said there was a misunderstanding. Primo, are you okay? We saw you leave. I can't believe your dad. Call me. Most I ignored, one I answered. Me, I'm fine. I made a choice. I'm sticking with it. A bubble appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Proud of you, Sophia finally wrote. About time. I laughed, sudden and genuine. It felt good to be seen, without having to perform. Horizon's office sat on the top 2 floors of a refurbished brick building, with long windows and plants everywhere. We always joked that the oxygen levels were better here than anywhere else in San Diego. As soon as I stepped from the elevator into the open space, the noise of keyboards and low conversation steadied me. Morning, boss, Issa called from the motion team's pod. Did the wedding have a chocolate fountain? Tragically, I said. I didn't stay long enough to find out. Laughter. I could breathe again. In my glass-walled office, I opened my laptop and fell into work the way a runner falls into rhythm. Review drafts, answer client notes, approve a storyboard, flag a budget line. Clean, solvable problems. At 11, I was in a Zoom with a consumer tech client when my assistant, Lena, stepped into my doorway, expression carefully neutral. Your father is here, she mouthed. Heat climbed my neck. I turned back to the screen. Can we pause for 5? I told the client. Then hit mute and video off. Tell him I'm in a meeting, I said to Lena. I'll be unavailable until after lunch. She nodded and retreated. I waited for my pulse to settle, turned my camera back on, and finished the call without hearing half of what was said. When we ended, Lena's message popped up on Slack. Lena, he says he'll wait in the lobby. Me, then he'll wait. Lena, security? Me, if he becomes disruptive, not otherwise. 20 minutes later, the lobby camera feed flickered on in the corner of my screen. He sat there, unblinking, like a monument. Tux gone. Navy suit, tie 2 shades too bright. Posture rigid enough to crack. The same man who could stand through 8 hours of surgery without shifting his weight. Waiting now in a space filled with macrame hangers and a neon sign that said, "Make good things." The absurdity almost made me smile. It didn't last. Lena knocked once and cracked my door. "I'm so sorry," she said, and then my father pushed past her, moving with the practiced authority of a man who has never been told no and has no intention of starting today. "Alexa," he said, "we're talking now." I stood, because staying seated while he loomed would put me at a disadvantage I didn't need. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "You're in my workplace. Lower your voice." He sat, but he didn't lower anything. Not his voice, not his gaze, not his sense of entitlement. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I stopped paying for your life," I said. "For Elena's, for Mateo's, when needed, for this wedding, for the house, the staff, the trips. I stopped. That's all." "You humiliated us," he said. "At your sister's wedding." "You humiliated me," I said. "At my sister's wedding." There's a difference. Color rose under his cheekbones. He'd always been a handsome man. Movie doctor handsome. High forehead, sharp nose. Eyes that could be kind until they weren't. Those eyes now were flint. "You were not invited," he said. "We made that clear." "Clear?" I laughed once, no humor in it. Was the family chat clear? The rehearsal dinner clear? The seat on the registry, missing my name, clear? You made it cruel. You made it public. And you made it while drinking champagne I paid for, in a cathedral I paid to reserve. His jaw flexed. "We didn't ask you for money." "No," I said. "You took it. You accepted it. You built on it. You lived on it. You let your daughter believe it came from Mateo, because that story was prettier to you than the truth." For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. He glanced at the wall of framed project photos behind me. Album art, app launches, the brand book that had put us on the map. He looked back at me. "How much?" he asked. "How much what?" "How much have you given this family?" I tilted my head. "In the last 3 years?" He nodded once. "About 230,000, I said, "not counting the payments scheduled for the next 12 months. His breath hitched, almost a laugh, but not quite. "That's absurd." "I can show you," I said, already pulling up a folder labeled Family Confidential. I rotated the monitor, scrolled through line items. Monthly transfers to my parents' account. Payments to a law firm that had passed the money on to Elena as a grant. A debt settlement from Mateo framed as loan forgiveness. 2 vacation packages bought in my name and billed through an agency as a family rate. The cathedral and catering deposits with my routing number at the bottom. He stared. The silence stretched. Finally, he said softly, "Why didn't you tell us?" "Would it have mattered?" I asked. "Would you have introduced me to your friends as your daughter, the creative director who built a company you don't understand, but that pays better than your old practice ever did? Or would you have said, 'This is Alexa. She helps with computers'?" His mouth opened, closed, opened again. For a heartbeat, I saw a man I didn't know. A man uncertain how to wield power in a room where it didn't automatically belong to him. "You think money replaces respect?" he asked. "No," I said. "I think you replaced respect with money. I kept sending it, hoping you'd see me. You never did." He leaned back, exhaled. He looked older all at once, the way people look in the hour after anesthesia, as if the scaffolding has been taken down and nothing holds the building up but the bare frame. "We can't afford the house without that transfer," he said finally. Your mother, he stopped. You'll sell, I said. Downsize. It's okay. People do it every day. A shiver of anger returned to his voice. We built that house. You built the expectation it represented, I said, not the family. The house didn't teach Elena to turn her back on me in a church. The house didn't tell security to escort me out. The house didn't call me a burden. He winced. He hadn't expected me to repeat the words. Maybe he'd hoped they would evaporate in air conditioning. Alexa, he said, we are your parents. I know, I said, and felt a surprising softness do a slow lap around my ribcage. And I'm your daughter. That's exactly why this hurts. He sat very still. The office sounds pressed in, the hum of the HVAC, someone laughing near the kitchen, the hiss roll of the espresso machine. I could imagine every employee pretending they couldn't hear. Are you going to restore the payments? He asked. No. We can't. He stopped again, and this time the pause felt like a beg. I didn't let it land. You're both physicians. You know how to triage. Start there. He stood abruptly. The chair legs scraped the floor. For a moment I thought he might say something startling. A real apology. A confession. An acknowledgement that he had failed me, and himself, and everyone in between. Instead, he put his hands on the desk and leaned in. You don't understand what you've set in motion, he said. This family survives because we present a unified face. I held his gaze. Then stop treating me like the bruise you can hide under makeup. We stared at each other. He stepped back. The muscle in his jaw stopped ticking. His shoulders dropped half an inch, the smallest surrender I'd ever seen from him. Tell your sister, he said at last, voice flat, that you canceled the honeymoon. She'll figure it out at the gate, I said, and the pettiness of it hit me late. I felt it like a stone in my stomach. No, I added, softer. I'll call. She deserves to hear it from me. He nodded once, a gesture stripped of pride. Then he turned and left, passing Lena with a polite thank you he'd never have given a nurse. When the door closed, my legs trembled. I sat quickly, put my elbows on my desk, and pressed knuckles to my brow until the trembling passed. Lena slipped in a second later. Want me to bring food? She asked. Something with bread, I said. She smiled and was gone. I called Elena at 2. She answered on the 4th ring. What? She said. No greeting. Just the tension string of a word pulled tight enough to sing. I canceled the honeymoon, I said, and the Italy tickets. I'll send you a reimbursement so you can rebook something, with your own money. You are unbelievable, she said. You couldn't wait a week? You had to punish me today? I didn't punish you, I said. I ended a pattern. You chose to get married in a cathedral I paid for, and then turned your back on me in front of everyone. Those are 2 separate choices. You own yours, I own mine. You weren't invited, she said. And behind the hostility, I heard something else. Fear, matey, or the rattled emptiness that comes after the party when you take off the dress and there's still a person under it. I know, I said. I showed up anyway. Because I'm your sister. Silence, but not the cold kind, the thinking kind. Did you really pay for the deposits? She asked. Yes. And Matteo? Wasn't the one who paid off your honeymoon flight's deposit? No. Or your house grant. Another silence, longer. When she spoke again, her voice had changed shapes. The edges had dulled. Why would you do that and not tell me? I hesitated. Because I kept hoping if I did it quietly, it would mean we loved each other without a scoreboard. That's not how Mom and Dad operate, she said softly, more to herself than to me. Everything's a scoreboard. I noticed, I said. She exhaled. It sounded like a puncture. I can't talk right now, she said. Marco's parents are here. They think. It doesn't matter what they think. It matters to you, I said. Yeah, she said. Another beat. I'll call tomorrow. Okay. Alexa? Yeah. I'm sorry, she said, and the words came out awkward and bare, as if she'd never tried them on before and wasn't sure they fit. Me too, I said. We hung up. I stared at my reflection in the black screen, then turned it over, as if that could turn over the day. Mateo came at dusk, when the office emptied and the city glowed. He didn't text first. He walked in like a man arriving in an operating room where something had already gone wrong. Got a minute? He asked. For you, always, I said, and some old part of me meant it. He sat and looked around. You've built something, he said, almost grudging admiration in it. I didn't realize. You didn't ask, I said, gentler than it could have been. He nodded, as if accepting a diagnosis. So, you pulled the plug. I did. Dad's in freefall, he said. Mom's in image triage. Sounds right. I don't have the kind of money you do, he said. Alimony, loans. You don't owe me a budget rundown, I said. I didn't do any of it to collect. Then why did you do it? He asked. I mean lately. If you knew they'd never… He stopped, searching for a word he couldn't say. Approve? I offered. He shrugged. Because I wanted to be able to say to myself, when I finally left the old pattern, that I had tried everything else, I said. Now I can. He leaned back, rubbed his jaw. Elena told me you canceled the honeymoon, he said. She'll rebook, I said. Or not. Her choice. You could have waited, he said. So could you, I said softly. He closed his eyes. Fair. We sat in the breath between what we had been and what we might be. He opened his eyes again, looked at the wall of project photos, the way our father had, and laughed without humor. He stood, hands in his pockets. You going to dinner if they invite you? If it's honest, I said. If it's not a PR exercise, then I'll fight for honest. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't speak up at the cathedral. Me too, I said, and meant something broader than apology. He left. I sat in the quiet and watched the city shift into night, one window at a time. The listing for our house went up 3 days later. Custom Bayview home, first time on market in 22 years. Photos showed every corner of my childhood, held up to bright light. The back deck, where we'd eaten birthday cake. The den, where my father watched soccer and corrected my posture. The kitchen, where my mother taught Elena to marinate chicken, while I was told to do homework at the table. I clicked through all 32 photos twice. Then I closed the tab like a bandage. My mother called that afternoon. It's just too big, she said, voice glossy. We've always wanted something more manageable. Sounds smart, I said. Maybe a townhouse, she said. Close to the museum. We could walk on Sundays. It'll be nice, I said. Silence crept in, the honest kind. Then, in a smaller voice, I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. I know, she said. And for once, it didn't sound like a script. It sounded like an admission. Do better, I said. We all can. She took a breath. Dinner Sunday? If it's just us, I said. No speeches, no guests. No speeches, she said. Your father will try. I'll elbow him. I surprised myself by laughing. I'd pay to see that. You've paid enough, mihija, she said. And I heard faintly. A door cracked somewhere I had thought was painted shut. In the days that followed, word seeped through the family like dye in water. My cousin's cousin knew a florist who'd heard from the coordinator who told the cake designer that drama had bloomed in the cathedral. Everyone had an angle. Everyone had advice. Some said I'd overreacted. Some said I'd finally grown a spine. Some said they had always known my parents were like that. As if shared hindsight could absolve anyone. I could have crash-landed in those opinions. Instead, I worked. I went to the gym. I called a friend I'd been avoiding because he knew how to ask questions that got under my armor. I sat on my balcony at night and watched planes blink across the dark, each one a human story inside a metal tube going somewhere else. On Friday, I opened a blank document and wrote 3 sentences. 1. I am allowed to be the daughter I am, not the daughter they wanted. 2. Money is not a love letter. 3. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors I get to lock and unlock. I printed the page and taped it inside my closet where only I would see it. It felt corny and necessary. On Sunday dinner, they moved fast. The house stood half-packed. Boxes labeled in my mother's neat script. Kitchen, donate. Books, keep. Photos, sort. The big paintings were already down. Square ghosts left on the walls where sun hadn't touched. We ate at the smaller table in the breakfast nook. The 4 of us, like a tight cluster on a raft. Roast chicken. Salad with too much dressing, the way my father liked it. Rice that tasted like childhood, because some flavors know how to reach across time and squeeze your heart without asking permission. No one made a speech. Halfway through, my father set down his fork. I wanted you to be a surgeon, he said. I wanted you to be me. I know, I said. You turned into someone I don't understand, he said. That scares me more than it should. I don't need you to understand my work, I said. I need you to respect it. He nodded, looked down, and then up again with the look of a man choosing his next words like steps on a narrow ledge. I'm sorry, I called you a burden, he said. I was ashamed, and I used that shame like a knife. I didn't pretend that it fixed things. It didn't, but it mattered. The apology sat in the center of the table, like a 5th place setting. We all ate around it, careful not to knock it over. When we finished, my mother brought coffee. She reached for my hand. You are our daughter, she said. Not our investment, not our proof, our daughter. I'm your daughter, I said, and felt the words land with their own weight, mineral and real. We talked until the sky outside the kitchen windows went black. We didn't solve anything. We started something. I left before we could ruin the progress by trying to fix too much. On the drive home, I turned off the radio and let the quiet answer me back. I wasn't elated. I wasn't crushed. I was something steadier. A woman who had done what she needed to do and could live with the consequences. By the end of that week, the house had an offer. Elena sent a text that said we rebooked a short trip and a photo of her smiling. Less glossy than wedding day smiles, more human. Matteo sent a screenshot of an email he'd written our parents. I can help with moving logistics, but not with money right now. It was 3 sentences long, and each sentence was a boundary. My phone buzzed less. My chest ached less. Every morning I put on a clean shirt, drank coffee that tasted like the first act of a good day, and walked into an office where people knew my name and didn't pretend I was someone else. And the story kept going, as stories do, unspooling past the big scene everyone gossiped about, into the part where lives are lived. 2 months later, the Rivera house emptied, like a body exhaling. Trucks lined the curb. Movers carrying out boxes, labeled with blue tape. Neighbors slowing their cars to watch. The manicured lawn was already fading under the September sun. The sprinklers turned off to save money. I pulled up mid-morning with 2 packs of cold water and a box of donuts. Matteo was already there, sleeves rolled up, directing movers with surgeon precision. Elena arrived later, hair in a ponytail, no makeup, dressed in cut-off shorts and sneakers. She waved at me in a way that wasn't performative, just tired and genuine. Inside, my mother fussed over kitchen boxes, while my father stood in the den, staring at the empty wall where the big landscape painting used to hang. His shoulders slumped, his tie loosened. He looked like any man dismantling the architecture of a life he thought was permanent. I handed him a bottle of water. He took it, surprised. Thank you, he said, softer than I'd ever heard. You're welcome, I said. That was it. No speeches. Just an exchange as human as it gets. Evening, the movers had finished, and we caravanned across town to a townhouse near Balboa Park. Narrower, yes. Smaller, yes. But also lighter. Sun flying through wide windows. hardwood floors polished clean. The air smelled like paint and promise. "This is nice," Elena said, running a hand along the banister. "It's manageable," my mother said, as if testing the word on her tongue. I believed her. We ordered pizza, cheap, greasy, delicious, and ate cross-legged on the floor because the dining table hadn't arrived yet. No crystal glasses, no catered spreads. Just family and cardboard boxes and paper plates. And oddly, it was the best meal we'd had together in years. After the pizza, conversation drifted. My father admitted the old mortgage had been strangling. Matteo confessed he hadn't been sleeping well for years, hiding financial strain under layers of bravado. Elena admitted she'd felt pressured to keep up appearances for Marco's family, and that her anger at me was easier than facing her own fear of not being enough. I listened. For once, I didn't try to fix anything with money or jokes or silence. I just let the cracks show. Cracks mean air gets in. Cracks mean you can start again. At one point, my mother turned to me. "Mija," she said, "I can't promise we'll get everything right, but I can promise I'll listen when you say no." That sentence alone was worth more than every wire transfer I'd ever made. Weeks passed. We built small rituals. Dinner every other Sunday. No formal wear, no speeches. Sometimes takeout, sometimes simple home-cooked meals. We argued less about appearances, more about real things. Politics, music. Whether pineapple belonged on pizza? It does. I won that round. There were awkward moments, of course. Old habits lurk in corners. My father still introduced me cautiously at times, as if afraid to admit pride out loud. But every once in a while, I caught him saying it. My daughter, the founder of Horizon Creative. He never lingered on the word successful, but maybe that was coming. Elena called more. Matteo stopped treating me like a rival. My mother sent texts just to share recipes instead of requests. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and read the 3 sentences I'd taped inside my closet. 1. I am allowed to be the daughter I am, not the daughter they wanted. 2. Money is not a love letter. 3. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors I get to lock and unlock. And I realized, boundaries don't destroy families. Pretending everything is fine destroys families. Silence destroys families. Boundaries, spoken clearly, can save them if the people inside the circle choose to listen. I had chosen, and slowly, unbelievably, so had they. One thing I learned for sure is you can pour money into people, into events, into gestures so big they echo off cathedral walls, and it will never replace respect. It will never buy you the belonging you deserve. Belonging starts when you say, "This is who I am. This is what I will no longer allow. This is where I draw the line." And sometimes, when you finally draw that line, the people on the other side decide they'd rather step closer than let you go. I would love to hear your stories about setting boundaries with family members or walking away from relationships that did not serve you. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are worthy of respect and love exactly as you.